Hello. We are kicking off 3-8 interviews. We've taken a little bit of a hiatus. And the first interview of 2026 is with Cameron. Cameron, where does the podcast find you?
Hey there. I'm in Portland, Oregon, not that far from you. And currently I am a staff software engineer at Block, a parent company of Cash App, Square, and Tidal, amongst other AI endeavors. Yeah, that's
Cool.
that's me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. I know that AI and development and all that fun stuff is hot in the news, and it's definitely something we talk a lot about on our weekly chats. Nathan and I, Fridays, we record live at usually about 3:30 Pacific, give or take. But I noticed you're in like a little bit of a studio office space. Is there anything you want to mention about your music setup or your an unusual work location for I think a lot of software engineers?
Yeah, I feel like some software engineers have their like guitars hung behind them as like trophies of I could do this, I choose not to. And so I've got like a modular synthesizer here, which
Yeah,
is cables, and there is some electronics, or there's some digital stuff, but a lot of it's
yeah,
analog. And in theory, I know how to use it, but mostly I just turn it on, play for 5 minutes, and then close it down for
yeah.
about a month.
That I feel like that's a pretty big trend within a lot of the folks I know who do software stuff too. Is there's a lot of like musical crossovers or like physical worlds engineering or doing things like cars or like woodworking, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Woodworking's big on my current hobby list. So I've been getting into like just window design. So not Microsoft Windows, but
Windows.
like wooden windows.
Oh wow. So you go to like right to hard mode.
Yeah.
What are the parallels that you see like in the process of having to try to like build and design software and build and manifest stuff in the real world? I feel like there's a lot of commonalities that people just don't see between what we would normally call trades jobs and like software.
I think there's a few, and it's becoming a little bit more apparent because as people are just sort of like, oh, what am I going to do post software? If all the jobs disappear, what am I going to do? And working with wood is not economical. Like it is a craft, and some people still do it,
Interesting.
and they spend a lot of time making, not writing, but like crafting beautiful things that are wildly too expensive to ever sell.
Sure.
And then the one of the reasons I like to do it is because it is inherently dangerous, because I am using power tools, and so you have to
Yeah.
focus on that, and it becomes meditative to be like you and the table saw. It's the only thing in the room, no drama, no weirdness.
Sure.
So that's, but
Well,
yeah, I
it's
think
extreme focus too, right? If you're not paying attention, you lose a digit.
yes.
That's so. What got you into Windows? That's I feel like for folks who don't know, like the art of Windows is a very long, hard thing that the medieval folks just like cut a hole in the wall and mastered it. And then the whole glass embedding, and then we like took it even harder with stained glass. Like what brought you to that juncture?
Yeah, and I would like to preface, if my partner was here, she would be like, he says he makes windows, he makes like little jigs, and he's never made a window in 2 years.
Okay.
But the 2 years ago, there was a big winter storm, and my craftsman house has
Mm,
drafty windows, and so I was like Googling, oh, where can I buy like replacement storm windows? Because I had five, but not I have more than five windows. And then Google decided to be predictive and saying, do you mean how do you craft storm windows from scratch using wood? And I'm like, yes, I do.
and then the rest is history. Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people who get into manufacturing stuff in the real world have old houses.
Yeah. And it's once again, it's not cheaper to build it yourself. It's just more of like it's something.
Yeah, that's a good hobby. All right, that's cool. Like I find a lot of similarities between like building good products just in general between software and I guess hardware, like the real world, pretty similar. But what are the things that you are seeing? AI is a big hot topic, and what are you seeing like the transformational stuff happening? Like, does how much has your job changed in 6 months? Is maybe the better question.
So we as a company went like very AI forward, like the from top down, it's like you should be using this before you do anything manually. And I think it's been changing so drastically over the past like year, especially six
Yeah.
months is where it's become okay, I actually am using this every day. as my first reach. There's splits. There's some people who use it extremely well every day, some people who just use it every day, some people who like let it think for them as opposed like I've seen this like not just at work, I've seen this with people. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
ChatGPT said it was okay to walk without looking both ways. It's like, you sure about that?
Yeah.
And but then there's like people who just extremely excel at it. And so
Yeah.
I'm seeing different layers of that. Yeah.
It's interesting, and it feels like the accelerator pedal was just like pushed, and then we hit a new gear. In like the model releases are changing constantly every 6 months or so, but the tool chains around the models are things that I know Nathan and I haven't really talked too much about. We talked a little bit about, I think, last episode, but like, how are you seeing? I'm trying to differentiate for people. So there's like asking the chat prompt and like asking the model for something, and it spits it out. And then there's the modality of the coding assistant where you have a window going and it's like helping you as you go, or like making suggestions, or you're chatting with it on the side. What other like tool chains are you seeing that's been really helpful for you in the last, again, like 6 months or a year? Like, how's the I feel like the software engineering world has also finally caught up. Like, what changes that are you seeing that people might be interested in?
One that's there's a few different names for it. One of the more frequent ones is RPI, or research plan implement. And I was joking with somebody a few months ago. It's like we've rediscovered Waterfall because we're just basically making our formal specs again.
Yes, yes.
And they did not like it. They're like, I want it out of this conversation immediately. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
fine. But that one is really interesting because it's like one of the variants I've done is you sit down and you rubber duck with the AI. You're like, I want something this shaped, and you're not. I don't want you to build it. I just want you to ask me yes or no questions until you
Yep.
think you know enough, and then you generate the requirements from that, and then you generate the spec from that. And so that's that research stage, the plan stage, and then the implement stage. I think there's Ready Player One is another tool chain that uses that. I haven't used
Yeah.
that one myself, but the that's helped a lot to do those bigger things,
Mm-hmm.
and also do them in like phases where you're like, hold on, that's going to blow out your context real fast. So it's like you chop it down the same way you would chop down a PR in the before days so that your human friends could read it.
Yeah.
That you start to be like, okay, if I layer this, we can spin off a version of this, spin off something like that. And then it gets into how you want to, do you want to do it all in one shot? Do you want to stack it as you go with something like graphite, which is like stackable Git for
Mm.
people who haven't used it. Those have been like tools that have, I hadn't even conceived of those kind of things 6 months ago.
Yeah. That's interesting. Like the planning context, I think, is really, because you mentioned too, like the extreme of folks is like they will either fully adopt it and not question, or maybe are really skeptical is the paradigm. And the folks that I see that are using it the most effectively are doing like what you said, that they're not letting it replace their judgment, they're not letting it replace their thinking, but they're using it as a tool. And I like personally find that it starts to ask me all sorts of stuff that like maybe I've considered, and I'm just like, ah, bing, 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 bing. And then I'm like, oh, I hadn't really thought about it that much, or that's an interesting edge case that we've gone through this kind of chain of thought. Now that we've created this plan, let's go do it. But that's no real difference than like normal software engineering. Like you typically would have a PRD, or you'd have some sort of a user interview, or if you're an internal, you know what you're building, you plan it out, and then you go. Or is
Ideally.
it different?
We've all been there. There's sometimes you just run. But I think, yeah, having that stop and like getting back into the wood style, like measure twice, cut once situation, that makes it so much more coherent because it's like hitting the gas and your alignment's trash.
Done. Yeah.
So you just, I hope for the best. And so this helps keep it a little bit more aligned to where you want to go, and also help other people figure out what it is you're building. Because the other thing I've noticed is that, especially in a large corp, like we've got 1,000 engineers, just the coordination between we're going to do this, we're going to do this, like that's now amplified. Even it was hard 4 years ago. It's really hard now. And so how do you keep track of where everybody's running at the same time?
Yeah. One of the things I struggle with, even in a small team right now is that the things speed so fast. They think so fast. You can build faster than you've ever been able to build before. And holding that in your mind is almost too much now. And I'd be really interesting. Are there strategies that are working for you working with other teams where they're also working really, really fast? Like, I think there's I think there's three modern environments that people are working in software. And like this legacy model where you can't use AI or everyone's AI skeptical, like you've already lost the game, just give up. I think you have the hybrid model where you have teams who are like using a lot of AI or doing a lot of AI forward development, but there's still parts of the code base or parts of the company that aren't, or they're under different processes that they can't move that fast, regulatory or whatever. And then there's the AI first, everyone's jamming on AI and you're all in the same lane. Where would you say like your day to day is? Are you in like the middle, or is everybody really just rocking AI?
I'd say the latter two.
Yeah.
There is a lot of legacy code bases that we have in various languages, and then
Yeah.
there's people who are just greenfielding everything, and at that point, keeping up with them is a little bit harder, just because they don't might not know what they're doing that morning, and just I'm just going to keep seeing where this ride
Right.
goes.
Yeah.
For certain level of products, you can get away with that. For certain levels of things, you can't, or nor you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like
and
medical. If you're doing a medical device, don't YOLO it.
yeah, but like there's I have colleagues who've been experimenting on like burning down backlogs, and the same way that we've all been on teams that have infinite backlogs and they just keep getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
It's okay. A lot of those that's just like busy chore work. So how hard is that? And another thing that's been interesting is because we have different code bases written by different people in different languages. Like I think there's three predominant languages for backend servers, just based on
Sure.
the age of the software here at the company. But I've been able to jump into a code base in a language I'm not strong in,
Sure.
say, here's the bug I'm trying to fix, here's the actual fix, make sure I understand it to teach myself, is this what I'm feel comfortable shipping? And then go to the team, and instead of saying, hey, can you put this on the roadmap, it's like, hey, can you put reviewing this PR on your roadmap because this is a bug that helped. And so that's worked out pretty well, which has been an interesting thing I
That
had never thought of
Yeah,
before.
no, that's a really awesome point for folks at home. Like it used to be, or maybe still is to some extent, but the team who runs the code base is the expert in theory, but you're interacting with it, you're making changes in whatever you're doing, and it might impact their stuff too. And there used to be a lot of crosstalk where you'd have to either cross roadmap, and there's all sorts of levels of hell you can go down to try to delineate how you make progress. But with AI, you can just show up with a solution and say, hey, here's the thing that I think we need to do. Can you make sure that it works and like fits in what you're doing? That's really, that is transformational from a like large organization bureaucracy
The
perspective.
other thing that's like in the same vein that's transformational, no one likes to talk about. In theory, that team is the expert, but in practice, that team,
Yeah,
some of the time, they just inherited the code base due to a reorg, or the
sure.
original author experts have long since atrophied away. And
Or it just
the,
works and no one touches it because it
yeah,
works.
but they had no one's touched it in 5 years. And like, oh, yeah, that thing just works. Please don't touch it. But
Yeah,
like the ability to unlock your own team to be like, hey, we don't really know how this thing works. Let's dig into it. Does this do what we think it does? Isn't as expensive as it used to, because you can have like
right.
the thinking models that are better at going deeper and being like, go research, do a depth first search on this, figure out how this works, and see if there's anything that could be fixed in like a 10 line or less PR.
Yeah.
That's been like super insightful too.
Do you find then, is there a greater balancing act then of like people coming to you for stuff or you going to other people for stuff versus you focusing on your features? Because I would assume that anything you're trying to build, like things that used to take days or weeks are now taking hours or days. Or
It
is it still,
depends.
yeah,
It depends on if anyone cares about what you're working on, I think is
sure.
the cynical way to say it. If somebody's like, you go do your thing, you can just keep motoring. I'd say most of my day is not spent coding at all
Mm,
anyways, getting alignment, making sure people understand what's going on with something. And then when the one of the beautiful things is that, oh, I've got 15 minutes free, cool, ship a feature, because I can do that now, and then I can
right.
come back like 4 hours later and be like, where was this? Did this work? Cool. So that's been good for like interrupt driven schedules.
Yeah. No, I was telling someone the other day too that that's how I work now. It's like I have a few bots going and just be switching back and forth, go take a call, do some weather work or whatever. And if I forget about it, it doesn't matter, or it just churns and then it's done. And then I come look at it, give it some feedback and keep going. And there's all sorts of asynchronous systems that'll launch off in the background and do commits for you and do checks and all that stuff. And your mileage may vary with how well that works, but in certain instances, it's pretty awesome. So do you see it more like, okay. So what I want to address is like everybody keeps saying software engineering is dead. I don't believe that. I think it's transforming in ways that are hard to understand in the moment, and everyone's seeing now that the AI is definitely more capable than we've thought, or the people who haven't really been getting it are now starting to get it, and it's starting to spread. But I'm just dubious of this. Are you, because you said most of your day isn't coding anyway, and one of the arguments that I make for software engineering is a lot of your job is trying to figure out what the hell to do and what's the most impactful thing to do. And AI doesn't change that. It might help you synthesize better or faster, but you still have to know what to do. Do you see software engineering being dead in 6 months?
First off, big E engineering or little e engineering? Because there's a difference.
Define both of those for folks.
I'm Canadian, and in Canada, engineering is like a protected discipline thing where there's professional organizations and actually study software engineering. Capital E, you're designing. Originally, it was like pacemakers and nuclear reactors, and then it branched off. But so like very high rigor, high load bearing systems, I'd say warrant that level of engineering.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had such a shortage of people capable of producing code that 7 years ago, you could just go to a boot camp for 6 months, be in like an not accredited, like just, I got a certificate. I can sling out Ruby or JavaScript, which is what people needed. So
yeah,
I think the bar for can you train in 6 months and get a tech job, probably that one's going away if it hasn't already. Mm-hmm. I think understanding like the nuances of how complex systems work together and understanding the fundamentals, like when you see something, it's a similar pattern. It's like, how do I apply this pattern to solve this new problem or the same problem that we've been solving for 50 years.
Yeah.
It's not as old as bridge building, but
for sure.
I think there's always going to be a need for that. And then there's also, we just have a huge corpus of existing software, could be retrofitted or could be updated should we choose to.
Well, that's interesting. I want to come back to that with the legacy rebuild kind of idea. But what you were saying too, I think really hits it home. And one thing I've really found in using this stuff I don't even call it vibe coding at this point because the AI just really does all the work. And I'm really looking more at a high level outcome, or if stuff really gets screwed up, then I have to dive in a little bit, but I'm not generally reviewing the code. I'm more telling it like, hey, this thing isn't working in this way, or we need to make it happen this way. But I have noticed that I do have to intervene at some points because it'll do really dumb stuff that just, it's, yes, that technically works, but we shouldn't create a race condition to make the app go faster.
Yeah, it definitely cuts corners. Well, so I think one of the things that's important to understand is that it's based off of the corpus of the internet, and the internet is not publicly the best code. It's usually people making mistakes saying, how do I make this not a mistake?
How do I make it better? Yeah.
And Stack Overflow is going away because no one's using that anymore because they're getting their copy paste from a different source at this point. But there's a difference between software where you don't care about the code because you don't care what's inside of it. It's like that disposable thing that you buy off the internet and you're like, I'm never going to repair this. I'm just going to throw it away when it's done. And so the reason you would look at the code and care about the code to do that self review is, I'm going to get woken up if this goes sideways.
Yep.
And I want to know what I need to do at 3 a.m. And I'm not exhausted right now. So take that time. That's where I think there's a bit of a divide there. And I have projects that I sling out and my colleagues are like, really? This is, you shipping this? I'm like, we don't care.
Yeah. And that's a level of judgment that folks don't necessarily have without experience. You said you're a staff engineer for folks at home, like that's pretty high level. you've been doing it for a long time and you have a ton of experience. And I really love that distinction. And I don't hear that a lot in this AI software debate. It's like, I'm building a task app for myself. I don't really give a shit if it breaks or not. I can figure it out. If I'm accountable for it, or if I have people paying me money for it, there's a totally different set of conditions there that I probably want things to be a little bit more quality, or at least be able to be easily or more easily maintainable in the future as well. That's another thing that I find, is that a lot of these eloquent quote unquote solutions that AI will spit out really start to break down at scales that most people probably don't need to operate with. That's fine. But if you're actually in a company, or you're actually building stuff that people are really using and depending on, you're at a different kind of scale than just some vibe coded or AI coded kind of little project thing.
Yeah, and honestly, I've seen like stuff where it's easy to just throw the whole thing out, get a better
Yeah.
prompt, one shot the whole thing from the ground up, and that's the most economical thing to do for that. So you don't need a hugely portable, upgradable, modularized ever if you're just going to throw it out again.
And you might, I would say too, that if you're working with other teams, other people, you have to integrate stuff. That's also a different level of complexity or necessity than I just making my little task app at home, or I vibe coded some betting tracker for me and my friends, or so whatever people are doing.
Yeah.
And I think it's really easy to see, I built my little betting tracking app where all my friends can come sign up for it on like a Lovable or something like that, versus I have a multi-billion-dollar company and this is my product.
Yeah, and but there are throwaway stuff where it does make sense too. I had to update like 10,000 configuration files, and it's like I could have the AI go do it and hope that it does it consistently every single time, or it's like,
Right.
or just write me a throwaway script that updates everything one shot. Like I can point
Mm.
it 10 times and then I throw the whole thing out, and it doesn't feel like wasteful. You're just like actually
Right.
saved tons of time and energy by having this disposable thing.
And that's something I don't hear a lot about either. It's okay. I'll make the point too that I think it's really easy to extrapolate. I made this app thing or web thing or whatever you're doing, to now all my engineers can one shot the code and it's fine. And why do we have bugs, right? Because it's a different level of proficiency or quality, or however you want to term it. There's just different requirements at an enterprise level or a company level than your personal thing, or the vibe coded thing you did on a weekend and think you can just pop it into production. Do you have any advice for folks on this? Because this is one of the big things that I keep hearing, and I just kind of like roll my eyes or bang my head when I hear folks that are in managerial roles be like, I coded this app, so why is our product development life cycle taking months?
I don't I don't know if I have
You
like
haven't solved it
evergreen.
yet?
No, but like my it always goes back to okay, what was the same pattern as before? Like before a year ago,
Yeah.
I joined a team and I said, "Hey, we should do smaller commits. We should do conventional commits. So it's either a feature or it's a fix or it's a style or it's a refactor. It's none never combined. Operate them." And that was for the humans who reviewed it, where it's if it's a refactor, all they're reading is to be like, "Yes, you added nothing, stamp." Style, you changed literally nothing, stamp. Feature, I'm actually going to read it knowing that the only thing that's in there is relevant code. And
Right.
if you do that, take that same approach with as you're building the thing, it's easy if you choose to review it. And so you can shortcut and say, okay, it generated 10,000 lines, but I only really care about like these 20
Right.
because the rest of it was just moving stuff around. I have noticed AI given like free reign will just move stuff for no reasons. Oh, I like this 4 lines later. It's like, no, you send it back. That
Yeah.
and I've been like slowly on projects like evolving. Each one has its own agents.md with like suggestions and coding styles and strong opinions that Cameron has about object naming and
Yeah.
stuff like that. But it's still evolving.
Do you see a world in the near future, and it's really hard for humans to estimate time, and that's something I want to chat about too, but do you see like in the near term year-ish that AI is just reviewing AI's code and like you're really not involved in the quality? Because it's interesting that you said that the systems of working with code even are human oriented, right? Because I can only hold so much in my mind. I can't really read 10,000 lines of code, or if I read 10,000 lines of code, it takes me 10 hours or whatever that breakdown is. But in the age of AI, if we have AI reviewing AI, What does the human need to know? Where do you feel like that line stops? Or does it stop?
I'm not sold on the AI reviewing the code. I think every time I use AI to review code, or I have colleagues who do, it's more of, can you explain this to me in better detail because I don't want to Google the
Sure.
thing, or can you do a quick pass to see if there's anything that's egregiously problematic? But the whole point of code review is not about catching bugs, and it's not about inflicting your naming conventions on the poor person who just joined the team and doesn't understand how you feel about semicolons. It's really about saying that I understand what you wrote. So when it goes and breaks at 3 in the morning, I know where to start looking.
Yep.
And I don't think we're going to have AI go on call for us. And we might have situations where, like we've experimented with, can you do auto triaging on issues and stuff like that? But at the
Yep.
same time, you still want to know that there's somebody there for a real emergency. And if they're like, I don't know how anything works anymore, that's
Right.
a pretty dark future.
And that's the difference between your system being down or your service being down for a few minutes versus days.
Yeah. Oh, or it's, and in the before times, it would have been like, okay, find that old retired engineer who moved to Australia, wake him up and ask him if he
Right.
can explain this weird part of the code base, except that's going to be so much of the code base now.
Well, and that reminds me a little bit too of the adage of clever code is not necessarily good code, right? If it's if it's so clever and it works so well, but no one else can understand it, then it's not very good. It's the same way of you can be the smartest person in the room, but if you can't communicate your smart ideas, then you're really not the smartest person in the room because you can't share the intelligence, so to speak.
Yeah,
Uh,
and so
yeah,
that's why I think it's, for me, it's like that's always felt like the most important part of the code review stage is like
yeah.
making sure it's understandable, even when it's my own projects that I'll review my self review and be like, will I remember this in like 6 months?
And that's an interesting point, I think, too, that there's an accountability coefficient with all this, too, where when it breaks, who do you call? And I've used customer support that's been AIified. I'm sure you have too. It's awful. Like customer support's always awful. Like people try really hard to make it better, and some people do it better than others, but like it's hard and people are expensive. And so everybody invests money into trying to keep you away from people because it costs money to talk to somebody on the phone. But 90% of the time, I feel, and I'm sure most people probably feel this way too, my problem doesn't match anything that I'm being asked, or I know it doesn't match that. And it's some weird edge case that we just haven't thought about. And I need to explain that to a person. I literally had this problem today with a massive top 4 company not being able to handle information that the federal government and the state of Washington can handle. Weird, right? We're working on it still. It's been a year in progress, but this 24-hour cycle is the one that's going to fix it. And I have to explain this over and over again to people. And I think this is the problem with automated systems, right? Is that I did some change in the system. It was supposed to do a bunch of other stuff. No one really knows how it works. And here we are. And I think that's a really easy way for folks to grasp the problem of building these things is if you don't know what the process is supposed to be, you can't automate it. And then if you don't know what the code does underneath, you can't really figure out why the process didn't work in the first place, or it takes forever. It's not that
Yeah.
people won't be able to figure it out, it's you lose that. And that time doesn't matter until, you're losing $100 million an hour or something because you can't process something.
Or you're like there's an interesting thing where you brought up, it's like the people are expensive to like have on the line, but after a certain point that customer churns off and they're never
Exactly.
coming back. And like that's even more expensive. So
Yep.
that calculus I don't think ever gets fully done.
It's weird that it doesn't because everybody talks about like cost of acquisition, which is how much it costs you to acquire a customer. That's either marketing or incentives to use the product. And then there's this whole idea of upselling kind of things. And there's all sorts of terminology for it. I'm trying to use standard terminology for folks that don't necessarily live in the world. But I've heard very few conversations in my career about what's the cost of someone saying F this and walking away, or what's the cost of an influencer with 10 million followers saying, I had this really poor experience with your product and I don't like that. And it's an intangible to some extent, and it's really hard to measure, which is probably why no one talks about it, reputational damage or brand damage for folks like in the marketing space. But I feel like we haven't hit the precipice of the AI caused fuck up. right? Like it
Mm.
had nothing has hit the fan so hard because AI is still in early phases in most places, and it's not necessarily running the show. Like you said, it's assisting you. You're using it as a tool, but someone's going to say, we don't need that. We're going to fire the engineering team and have AI do it. And then it's going to really hit the fan. And then we're going to start to hear the horror stories. And then I think we'll reinvent the past and say, wow, if only we had some people to work with the AI, this wouldn't have happened. Oh, it says, I'm so smart.
I think that it happens both on the engineering side and on the business side where AI
Yeah.
is used instead of doing the work and not
Yep.
to accelerate the work. And
It's a good
if we
delineation.
treated it as a tool that is makes us better and as craftspeople, then that allows us to like accomplish things, try experiments that we couldn't justify funding,
Yep.
validate ideas. But if we're just like we turn off that thinking part of our brain and just be like, just do this for me. I don't want to think about it at all for like real things. And that's the same thing. It's like
Yep.
we don't is it accelerating the amount of cases that could be handled or the sales leads that get generated or whatever? Because I know there's there have been tells if somebody like had AI generated text or whatever. I don't know if it's getting better, but
Yeah.
like there's enough like undercurrent of ugh, and people are start to get turned off that with it. So I don't know. I think there's room for people to course correct and be like, no, no, no. This just allows us to do a better job when we need to do a better job. That's just what people have to internalize.
And I love the idea too that you hit on it that it there's almost no cost to having AI go try something. And so there's a lot of ideas that you have probably as an engineer where you're just like, it's probably not valuable, or I don't know if it's going to work, or I don't really want to put the time in because there's this other fire I need to fit. Do you see like the mix of your work getting some of those like edge cases or discovery of ideas? Are those coming to the forefront now more than normal? And I guess for folks who don't do this, like there's always more stuff you want to do than there's like time in the day or ability to do. And so like you were talking about earlier, the backlog, which is just a list of stuff that you want to do or think you should do, just grows and grows and grows and grows. You can burn that down with AI. But do you see things that are like, have you seen, I guess maybe the better question is, have you seen or have you used AI for things that you were an afterthought or kind of a would be cool, and then it's actually come to fruition and really been beneficial, or is it not quite there yet?
I think it's more of it's definitely there. Some people use it to like just chase dreams, and other people are
Yeah.
there are like more grounded. These are the tickets that I'm responsible for. So do I have time to go build the
Right.
wacky stuff while I'm trying to knock this stuff out? I've got a little bit more freedom with to like experiment and do stuff with my current role. And so I'll take time to just spin off some stuff or do some, for me, it's like a little bit of housekeeping stuff where it's like
Sure.
things that have been nagging and bothering me that I could never justify spending the time on it. It's like I spend 5 minutes a week. It looks like it's busy work but it's really any work. It's just ship it and constantly be cleaning up, which is, it's not as that experimental fun stuff, but it makes the whole system a lot easier to move in a more permanent way.
Sure.
So I've seen that. Yeah, you can definitely tell like there's some weird projects that catch legs real fast and
And
then
I
become load bearing, and you're just like, oh no, why did you write this and that
and
language?
that's there's an opportunity cost, right? Like with everything. Like sure AI goes and noodles on it or helps you lever in, and then you invent something that is now really hard to scale, or it's really hard to integrate, or it catches on and now you have this kind of almost legacy code problem, even though it's like new code or a new thing because of the way that it's been developed or worked or hacked together to function. And like, yeah, this has happened in companies before, but the timeline for that kind of stuff typically was like weeks or at least multiple days, and people have caught on. And but now someone can go in the corner for a half a day and come up with potentially a new major feature or product, but not really think through the whole architecture, have AI do it, and make a bunch of mistakes along the way. In terms of legacy code, do you see like an opportunity to like modernize stuff? That's the biggest like problem in any company that's been around for like more than a couple of years, right? You start in some language or you start in some style, there's a better way of doing it, or you evolve over time, and then you have all this just like what we call legacy stuff just sitting around. It's usually pretty important stuff, or it's old stuff that nobody really wants to go after because it's so integrated into everything else and it's just really hard and complicated? Or is it still like just not quite there?
I think it's there. I think it's how you use it. And this gets into like any company that is even marginally successful probably has an old monolith that was written by one of the founders, and everybody's like, oh, this
Yeah.
thing. And monolith decomposition is one of those things that's there's a art to that too, to like knowing like you don't
Yeah.
rewrite the whole thing at once. You like carve out a little bit and then throw that over there, carve out something else. And each time you carve something out, you're like, okay, look at the world again. Which is I thought this thing was going to be easier, but there's something over here that's really easy to do. And you can use AI as tools to accelerate that. So, okay, we're going to tackle this thing, carve real quickly, throw it over there, analyze the whole thing, see if there's something I'm missing. And but that still takes time, and that's where the intuition goes in. And like people
Right.
talk about, it's like it'll replace engineers, but I think one of the most important skills an engineer develops is knowing when to stop and to be
Yes.
like, we don't need to work on this. We should not work on this anymore. It's
Yep.
like the work never finishes.
Yep.
And it's never the one thing I love to tell people when it's like when you become a very seasoned engineer, you learn that everything is broken at all times. And it's just a matter of what is the most broken thing today.
Yep.
And you focus on that fire until it's like a dull roar, and then you go to a different fire. And that's the same thing like with those legacy code bases. It's like how do you fix it in instead of creating a new monolith in
Right.
today's modern nightmare language, you just build it in a composable situation. And I think there's a lot of like really really legacy stuff that we don't talk about, like COBOL. Like
COBOL. Yeah.
why are we not setting up AI companies that can go and fix the airlines and banks and be like, hey,
Right.
do you want to run this in Rust or Kotlin or something? And it's like
Yeah.
build that out because no human wants to learn
There's a
COBOL.
couple startups doing that, and I'm so dubious because I'm not studied in COBOL, but a couple of the big challenges that I understand with COBOL was that it allows you to basically do way creative stuff. And because of like memory requirements or like resource restrictions on a lot of these old systems, there's some really, 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 really clever, really, really unique, creative stuff. And it works in this specific instance and it doesn't apply anywhere else. And because the language is so free form in that regard, it's like almost impossible to try to like even modernize some of it because it's just so much time passing. I don't know if you have any experience on that, but I agree. This is what we should really be doing. But it also is like, these are the super hard problems that nobody really wants to talk about that I don't really see AI solving anytime, maybe ever, just because there isn't enough data. There isn't the right answer to even train on. What works at IBM in their finance department is not going to work for Delta Airlines.
I wonder if part of it has to do with there's enough in the language design because like programming languages and spoken languages have the same fundamental characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like programming languages that are very, very boring. Like Golang is intended to be like not
Yeah.
an exciting language. And then you have very expressive ones that become maintenance nightmares over time that I happen to love one of those maintenance because it's like you can be poetic and do all sorts
Yeah.
of wacky stuff. And I wonder if we took the models that were good at creating art and music and then taught them the
Oh,
languages.
sure.
That sounds like an insane fever dream. That
I
it
love
could
it. Let's
work.
start a company. No, and that's the thing. Like we open with that, where a lot of people I know in software engineering, especially really experienced folks, have all sorts of what seem to be really crazy hobbies or pursuits. But if you think about it and deconstruct it, it all makes sense, right? Like building software and building a physical window or building music is basically the creative process. We could talk about a lot on this podcast. It's just in a different context. And I think that's what people really miss. But yeah, that would be really interesting to see. And that's the holy grail for folks. So I guess if folks really don't understand, like COBOL was like the first mass produced language that anyone could learn in quotes. And part of it, I think too, part of the problems are a lot of these, it's like the Excel macro problem. If you've ever worked at a company with Excel macros or Access Database was another one where it let a lot of people do a lot of things that we have now learned are bad, but they were great. And it worked really well for business when you have this really strange edge case and then somebody fixes it. And then 2 weeks later, there's another edge case. You just compile. It's almost more like compiling heuristics. And now there's so many different variables that it's actually hard to try to even understand again what it actually does. And nobody wants to spend the time and energy to figure it out because it always just works until it doesn't.
Dan, I think I never learned it because I never had an opportunity to learn it because it was
Yeah.
always expensive. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
a mainframe. Like, everybody can learn JavaScript because there's a web browser and you can say
Right.
inspect code and you just start writing JavaScript. And I wonder if could we create virtualized things where we could create
Mm.
playgrounds and go into that? But that's if we care. Like, at a certain
Yeah.
point,
You see these once in a while too. Like the government will try to like reinvent some system that's been around for 100 years, right? And then it always ends up failing or goes into 10 years of development because again, it's the principle of what's the outcome? What are you trying to drive with this? Are you trying to replicate a system that everyone agrees is so bad it needs to change? Or are you trying to like improve the system? And now you're trying to do improvements on top of maintenance, on top of a conversion, and you're trying to balance three really challenging things at once at some scale that you can't really do. Going back to the time management idea. So we've talked about it on the podcast before. I brought it up. I know we've talked a lot about this of how do you actually plan something or how do you estimate things? That's the biggest problem I think with software and engineering is when is it done? And I know you've had some really good advice to me and we've shared some of it on the podcast, but I don't see that any different now with AI because AI still it lets you do anything you want in theory in quotes, right? There's limitations, but you still have to know the right thing to do. You have to know when to stop, like you said. But I want to build an app. How do I plan that? How do I plan those features? How do you think about breaking stuff down in the age of AI where you mentioned a method where you talk to it and it refines on the fly? Like, do you need these planning sessions, do you think? Or can you just get a little bit of detail from a customer, from an internal team and AI it up and then show them versus having to do these multiple planning iteration systems? Do you see that changing? And then do you see how we estimate what we're doing? Does estimation get better or is it even worse? Because now we can just do stuff.
I'm gonna start with the end. Estimation
Yeah.
is not getting better. I don't know anybody who's gotten better at estimation. There's some things like I can knock that out in an afternoon, and then hopefully they don't ghost you for the rest of the day. But I think the taking the time to plan and taking the time to figure out what it is you're building it's always important. Like you can show somebody like a wild mock-up is this on the right track?
Yeah.
And that just before we invest 2 afternoons of AI developing nonsense. But that's always good to just have that level of okay, we both agree that this is going to solve your problem.
Yep.
And the less like artistic freedom you give the AI, the better has been my
Yeah.
experience. It's like it will add weird things for the sake of adding weird things. And because it's like, oh, this other side project that I found off of like Hacker News from 9 years ago also
Yeah.
had a bloom filter for some reason. And so, yeah.
Any tips for folks estimating stuff?
So like before times that you and I had
Yeah.
these conversations was like humans don't recognize long distances, they don't recognize long durations. So
Yeah.
you roughly know what a day is and you roughly know what like 20 feet is
Yeah.
and you're going to be able to spot that pretty well. But like outside of that, it just gets worse and worse and your margin of error just gets larger and larger. What I've been doing as I've been building stuff up and doing those plan sessions is here's the milestone X that is like when I'm going to show it to the customer, but let's break it down in something that is a digestible chunk that a human could review and a model will not blow its context out. And
Yeah.
those tend to be pretty close to each other, at least they are today. And
Yeah.
so if you give it both of those constraints, it'll it'll be like, okay, I'll stack this in the conventional commit stuff that you're trying to build it into. I'll thread it out the way it needs to get threaded out or create tasks. And so like a lot of the stuff where I'm doing agentic engineering is the vibe coding, but the fancy term. When I'm doing that, it's like,
I'm using that from now on.
yeah, I create the GitHub tickets or
Yep.
whatever your ticket tracking system is and lay it all out. you read the whole thing and you're like, yeah, this looks like it's got all the pieces that it needs to be. And then you can have it do them sequentially. You can have conductor or one of the other multi-agent
Yep.
things go off and do it if you're just going to set money on fire. I have not figured out a way to economically use any of those
Yeah.
tools, but they're fast.
That's interesting too. That the what I guess what I heard was the estimation idea still applies to AI, even though you can just let it loose, and planning still really matters. And I use the analogy quite a bit on the podcast of if you go tell AI to build you Facebook, it'll build you some approximation that'll probably work with you and your friends, but you're not going to scale it to a 500 million person user base. There's just way too much complexity there. But I feel like it's also, you have to right size your ask for AI too, because like you said, if it's too specific, you're going to get, I guess the way here, maybe I'll give this. I find that if I tell it what to do, I get far worse results than if I give it outcomes that I'm trying to achieve and then some guardrails around what it should or shouldn't do. Like sometimes I'll give it hard rules, but sometimes I'll just say we want to, or like I'll give it better context of we're trying to help 50 users, not 10 million users. And then it'll right size a little bit. Is that a good approach, do you think, or should that approach be changed?
And I think that's good. I think that's one of those things I pull out from like the rubber ducking sessions. Usually they'll come back and be like, "What's the target market
Yep.
on this first version?" And that's the other thing is like it's building a first version. You talk about like building Facebook. It's not even Facebook didn't build today's Facebook one shot. They built a very small thing and then expanded and expanded and expanded.
They built the
Yeah.
Facebook.
And so if you focus on like building that smaller version and saying, here are, I'll be like, it's going to expand here, it's going to expand here. I don't want to get into that. We're not building that. But keep that in mind. And that helps it build things in a modular way to be like, okay, I know that we're going to swap out the authentication model with some other authentication model. And it will also ignore instructions. And like
Yeah.
this gets into for load bearing stuff. If you just say you generate 100 tickets and say just go to town, I've done that. I did that with 15 for a project, and then I checked back with a local subject matter expert on one of the early stages, and I'm like, okay, do you mind just humoring me and reviewing this? And like, oh yeah, all of this is wrong. And they're like,
Yeah.
you can fix this, you can fix this. It's not like wildly throw
Yep.
it out wrong, but change it. But that derailed the other 14
Yeah.
in the stack. Basically, got thrown out because of that. So
And
it's
that's
like,
exactly though like how building software before rampant AI was as well, is that if you have the team and you just go for 2 weeks and then you spit out a feature, you have feature creep or you have the distance from the actual outcome, and it's really hard to manage that in a team level for the business or whomever your customer is for this. And it's interesting because I think that timeline and that time frame decreases, but you can also ask it to do far more. I can have my 2 weeks worth of teamwork done in a couple hours, but if I don't plan and define that work correctly, I've now just created way more heartache, way faster, and probably got something that's closer to an approximation of what I wanted, but also potentially much more like techie debt kind of idea where we've have a lot of baggage with. On the idea of tech debt, it's interesting. I was in a social media battle with a few people on this where I proclaimed something along the lines that it's never been easier to make more tech debt. And tech debt in itself is this kind of abstract concept that means lots of different things to lots of different people. But do you see AI really increasing tech debt? And then do you think tech debt's a bad thing or a good thing, or is it a necessary evil?
tech debt. I was fortunate a few years to sit with somebody who was really deep into Bill, but not like the
Yeah.
big A sales agile, like more of the this is why they created it stuff.
Yep.
And they said you should never say tech debt as a negative around executives because they understand debt differently
Yeah.
than the average engineer who
Yeah.
thinks of consumer debt like credit cards. And for an executive, they're like, no, no, it's financial debt, it's leverage.
Yep. Exactly.
And so and that's really what tech debt is. It's leverage, and if it was leverage without any real payback, then it's closer to the credit card consumer debt.
Yep.
And I think it can create more, but and it can create more tactically. So you could
Mm-hmm.
say, you know what, there's three different ways we could build this. Build all three. Go. And you just send three agents off, come back, and then you look at that and you're like, okay, there's two pieces we're absolutely throwing out today, and one piece we might throw out in a week. And so
Right.
like that kind of leverage is mind-boggling that we could do that. Like if you could do that, you would be hurting a lot of people's feelings before, but the robots don't have feelings. So you can take
Exactly. Yeah,
advantage of
yeah.
that.
And
So
that's an opportunity cost problem. If I had my team
yes,
build three different things, that's people's time that it doesn't do. The robots just cost money and electrons.
yes. And the idea is that whatever your meant is should make enough to pay for at least those three sets of tokens. So that that's one thing. But I do think going unchecked, there's the potential for tech debt in the negative sense where people they build the prototypes that weren't designed to be the load bearing thing. That thing
Right.
caught the bus and then all of a sudden it's like now we support a fourth language at the company that we didn't intend to. Or
That's a good point.
things that are just like this became load bearing and we can't change this API because even though this is a terrible API, somebody started subscribing to it.
Right.
And yeah, none of that's going to go away. I think, and that just gets more into the role of the engineer to be like, hey, do do we know what we're doing here? Like, why are we doing this? And are
Yeah.
we comfortable with this risk? Because that you can't avoid any risk. If you're avoiding any risk,
You're not doing
you're
anything.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a kind of a fascinating idea on the agentic prototyping slash like tech daddy thing. And you made the comment earlier with like multi-agentic systems that you're finding it hard to keep the costs down, for lack of a better word. How do you think about that? I know a lot of companies, like smaller tech companies, there's usually budgets or like they're trying pilots and it's let's see how much we can burn. Larger companies tend to not necessarily care so much. Any rules of thumb on this stuff? Because it's infinite time, infinite money. I can build infinite things, but I think what we're going to see pretty quickly here is that, yeah, the AI stuff's great, but we can't be spending tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on a product or a feature that isn't going to bring that revenue back or isn't going to bring that revenue back over 10 years or whatever.
I think we're early up in this, at least from where I sit.
Yeah.
We're early enough that it's like we want to make sure that we're learning how to use the tools correctly, and like those costs are
Yep.
that they it's almost training costs
So
versus like
it's literally a cost of learning, right? It's a cost of doing
yeah.
business. Yeah.
And so at that point, if you're fortunate to be at a place that is here's the credit card, go for it.
Right.
That's a little bit easier because you can. We don't learn from doing the right thing. We learn from making mistakes, and
Exactly.
so we got to build some stupid things and try some. I would sit there and just be like, I want to build this, and then the next prompt would be like, make it a little bit more blue, and then maybe
Yep.
I'm going to do this other thing, and that's a very inefficient way to be building
Yep.
things. And I eventually hit my context window and was like, I didn't do anything this whole time, and
Yep.
so learning how that works and learning there's also like the engineer's time is very expensive. So if you err on the side of that, that can be good. I'm just the thing is once you get into the multi-agentic things, you spin up 9 of them and they're just like
Yep.
burning water bottles for 20 minutes and you're like, that's what? How many tokens?
Yeah. No, and I think that and it's that's where you get back into more traditional engineering. AI engineering is a lot of math and models and that kind of stuff. But then when you actually apply it, you have multi-agent systems, but you can use different models for different agents to do different things within your build, right? So you can have cheaper models doing things that aren't needing to be expensive and like how we break that work up. It's almost like task scheduling. We just haven't
Hmm.
figured that out really well yet. It was like in the early days of task scheduling when you're dispatching jobs or something on the supercomputer cluster. That took, I don't know, probably what, 5 or 10 years to really get it figured out at some kind of scale that makes sense and that is reliable enough that your project doesn't crash my project and that we have some sort of resource sharing and scheduling and we don't bring down the whole cluster. I feel like we're just really, there's routers and all this kind of stuff. We're just in the infancy of that and it's going to get better and better.
Yeah, I think so. And it'll also that was one thing that surprised me up front. Like a year ago, I'm like, why is nobody caring at all about the cost? And then
Yeah.
slowly there'll be like little tickers on a lot of the ease or agent front ends that are like, this is how much money this costs now, and you're like, okay, what did I and you but you get that feedback loop and you're like, I asked it two things and it was $2. Then I asked it one extra thing and it jumped up to $11. What did I just do there?
Right.
And being able to have the humans have that feedback loop is something that people can talk about. But I haven't had many conversations with anybody who's they're quietly learning, but
Yeah.
we're not sharing the techniques as much.
And that's interesting. So would you consider that like prompt engineering, or is it more like is it more of an abstract?
I think it's prompt engineering. I think it's also like understanding what you want. Like it's they it comes back to that requirements thing. If you
Yeah.
know what the requirements are specifically for one thing you're working on, usually it'll go out and be like, okay, I figured it out. There was a bug a colleague of mine found in a somebody else's system, and we just paired up and it's like, okay, let's take everything the bug report you put in the Slack, put it into this, point it at the code base,
Yep.
and see what happens. And it came back 5 minutes later, $1.75, and said, here's the bug fix. It's a race condition.
Yep.
And so it was like stuff like that is
Where it would take you maybe an hour or 2 hours to debug, and that's way cheaper than having you or a team of engineers discussing it.
oh,
And
that
it's
was
that
going to take me at least a
trade-off thing.
week.
Shit, yeah. And that's the fascinating part of it, because again, going back to estimation, part of the problem I think of estimation is that you don't necessarily understand what you're doing until you're doing it, and then it is always harder. Anyone who's ever, oh, I'm just gonna do a little remodeling on the house. Now we found that that wall was actually load bearing and no one thought it was, or someone ran electrical through there 25 years ago and didn't put it on the plan, or anyone who's ever done code stuff, you don't ship the day before a weekend or something because there's always bugs that you don't think about. That hasn't changed. And to your point, it's you still have to know what you want. You have to know what your outcome is. You have to know why you're doing something. And I think a lot of companies who are struggling with AI are struggling with that core problem. Because AI is just going to make you faster at not knowing what you're doing or not knowing what you actually want. You fail faster, that's a benefit maybe, but you're still not accomplishing what you think you need to, or you're not driving in that value or that revenue.
Hopefully you feel faster. Sometimes it's like you don't even recognize that it came back as like, here's the thing. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that seems right. I don't know.
That's a good point, right? If I ask it to do some big feature or something and it comes back and I do a little testing and it seems to work and I put it out and all of a sudden there's a core piece that isn't functional, or the customer service calls now go up through the roof because the thing doesn't work the way that I thought it should, or we didn't hit a condition. Anything that you want to mention that we haven't talked about yet? Did I not ask you something that I should have?
Yeah, there's one thing that has been driving me. We touched on it, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that we do now that we have always done because it was the right thing to do, except we never
Right.
did it. It's like writing good docs and commenting the code. But
Yeah.
now we like write markdown run books that we nestle in the repo for the robots, and we
Yeah.
we have more empathy for these learning language models than we do for our peers, it seems.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is localized to any specific group of people. I've just noticed
No.
that as a
Yeah.
trend where it's now people can be, oh, this makes sense. I understand it now that the robots want it. But it's like we should have had good APIs before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the behavioral change of new technology is always the hardest part. And if your company can't define what your objectives are to make revenue or to make money or to make a better product, the AI stuff isn't probably going to help. It's probably, you might see some leverage come, you might fail faster, you might fail more spectacularly, but it's so funny because I hear product management is dead all the time too, because if engineering's dead, product management must be dead. And AI is really better product manager than any product manager I've ever worked with. That's because most product managers suck. I say that, it's a career, right? But it's also like the stuff that people attach to in product management. It's I don't know how many product people I know that don't actually use the product that they're supposed to be building. It's mind blowing to me. Like you don't, and there's some industries where like if you're working in like medical software or something, you're probably not using the medical record at home sort of thing. That's a little bit different. But there's so many other products that I know that I know people. I'm not going to name names. I probably should, but I won't. That they don't even use their freaking product. Like, how do you expect to be able to build a better product or build the things that really matter if you yourself aren't even using it? The other big thing I see, the cardinal sin of product management, is not talking to the users, not talking to people who are the power users, who are just using the shit out of your stuff, and also talking to the people who aren't using the shit out of your stuff. Like, why did you choose not to use this? Why don't you use this instead of this? Or what are you using? Because you can sit and look at data, you can talk to your team as much as you want, but I find so many people use things not as intended. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but you learn so much and you can make a better product that way. And why do you want to talk to customers? It's like, what do you mean? Why do I want to talk to customers? Like, why do you not want us to talk to customers?
Yeah, I think that gets into people forget why they're doing this in the first place. There's some people that
Yep.
like, I know people that say, I just want to code for the sake of coding, put my headphones
Yeah.
on and just go. But most of us are trying to like help do something. There's a point of what we do, and it's like, if the job disappears, people will still need things. So it's like,
Yep.
what is that chasing? And I agree with you too. It's like you should always be trying to talk to the people who are using it successfully, and also the people who are using the microplane in the kitchen. Like,
Yeah. Why? And maybe that doesn't, and I think to be clear with folks too, you might learn that no one else is probably going to do that. And you just found some creative person, and that's okay. But you can usually extrapolate why somebody figures out a way to cleverly use something. And this is the same way with software. You build the perfect software, someone figures out how to use it in a way you didn't intend, and now maybe they hack your system. It's that same kind of idea that you can build for the perfect use case, but then there's going to be all sorts of stuff that you can't anticipate that happens. And AI doesn't change that either. It
yeah,
maybe
or you
makes it
find
faster to fix, but
you have an accidental use case. Like that
yeah.
microplane one it's a real thing. People use it for lines, and it's just like
Yep.
they sell more of those to home cooks than woodworkers at this point.
That's interesting. That's really interesting, actually. Okay. So I usually end on that question, but I came up with a question that I haven't asked yet. What's one thing that you know now that you wish you would have known when you started out? Like, what's the wisdom piece? Because a lot of what we've been talking about is wisdom. And I'm a little afraid for folks who are just coming into the AI coding is going to destroy engineering idea. It's not, but that's the current vogue trend. It's going to transform it. But what I'm afraid of is like a lot of the wisdom that we've talked about through this podcast is that it's that stuff you've learned. Those are mistakes you've made or mistakes you've observed. Some of those will go away with AI. Some of them, won't. But like, what's that imparting knowledge that you could give to somebody starting today that you wish you would have known, or someone would have told you maybe even better?
I think the biggest one is you don't learn from doing the right thing. You learn from making mistakes. Don't hide those mistakes. Like
Yeah.
every one of those is something that you don't have to be proud of it, but it should be like visible because that was an inflection point where you learned something. Somebody from I think Google years ago did a talk on like when to open source a project, and they were like as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Don't wait until like it's polished. Don't wait until it's ready. Stick it out there, fail in public, because like you might be failing silently and nobody will ever know. And there's always going to be new things to mess up on. And so I do have colleagues who are like, is this like what do I do with my career? Like, especially the junior ones.
Yeah.
And people like to talk about compilers. And I'm like, when I was in college, people were still hand tuning assembly code.
Yep.
And so that sounds ridiculous at this point, considering most people aren't even writing languages that use real machine code.
Right.
They're doing something that works on a virtual machine that built on something else. And so like these abstraction layers have changed, and it's really just understanding what are the problems, what's the pattern that you're going to have to figure out, and how do you apply it to the new scenario. And so those are, I don't know, that's the wisdom that I've
For sure. I
got
love
behind
that.
this.
And the get it out in public thing as fast as possible is like the best advice I've ever gotten or experienced, because there's kind of like three modes to like developing anything. It's you're either so early on in the process that you're the first or you're the pioneer. That might not be the best mode to be in. Maybe it is. Maybe you're in a research lab in a university. That's those people. Those people are always, very few people, if any people in the world, are doing the same thing. If you're working for a company though, you probably don't want to be in that space. Or if you are in that space, you want to make sure that that's the right space to be in. That second modality is that you're in an established problem set, but you're approaching it in novel ways, or you're trying to come up with new solutions to problems, or you're finding new problems in that space. that's the perfect time to get in front of other people, because you either found some stuff that's valuable and they're like, oh yeah, good, do it. Or what I find too is that you'll get questions like, why do you think this is a problem? Or why is this approach something that we should change? And then you're forced to defend that. And that will help reinforce your own thinking and modality. And maybe you find, oh yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe we shouldn't worry about this now, or this isn't the most important thing to do. Or maybe you're like, actually, I see that you don't understand that. Let me give you some more information or clarify what we're trying to do. And then people might take that and say, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't consider that. That's a really good idea. Or maybe they say, yeah, that's even more reason why we shouldn't do the thing that we're doing.
There's also
Yeah.
you might be on the cutting edge and not realize it. Like there
Yeah.
was at least one time in my past where I was working on a weird side project and I showed somebody after like 4 months of working on it. And they're like, I'm like, do you think this is at all interesting? And they're like, you've done something that nobody else has ever done before. I'm like, what? That can't be real. And then I like ended up
Yeah.
speaking at conferences on this thing because I'm like, why didn't
Yeah.
anybody do
What
this
seems
before?
obvious to you, everyone else is, ah, yeah, no way. Yeah, 100%. To close out, is there anything that you want to share with folks that we haven't talked about? Are you watching something cool or reading cool stuff? Or I always like to try to share knowledge, even if it's not related to our topic.
Reading lately, I've been reading books on woodworking. There's a anarchist workbench toolbox series, and it's interesting because it's like there's a lot of parallels back to software where like
Sure.
was laughing out loud in the first paragraph because he was talking about like tools and tool shaped objects. I'm like,
Yep.
I know exactly that feeling. That's just, I think there's a lot of like interesting parallels between those kind of craftsman style books and like revisiting, once again, same problem. It's just pattern matching on
Yeah.
this is a different style of problems. That's all that comes to mind right now, though.
Yeah, and that's with creativity, right? The more information you're exposed to, the more ideas, the bigger your idea toolbox or your knowledge toolbox is, and you can come up with approaches that you might not have considered before. No, I love that. Thank you so much for taking the time, and you'll be the first guest of 2026. We took a little hiatus, but we're getting back into it.
You can find us at
Thanks again.
38.com.
Thanks for
It's
having
like
me.
the word create, but with a 3 instead of the C. As always, we encourage you to listen, watch, do. We'll see you next time. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/38 or at ko-fi.com/38. Thanks for listening.